Alright, so you guys did the distributive property in 6th grade, so we're going to just do a real quick review, do a few problems, and then off you go. Alright, so let's start with the distributive property is where, I'm going to write up here. So distributive property is where if you have an A outside of B plus C, right? You're distributing, you can't just say this is AB plus C because this A is timesing by that B and the C. So you're going to do a rainbow. You're going to take A times B, which would give me that AB, but then you also have to take that A times that positive C, and that would get you your AC. So you get AB plus AC. This would be your answer for that distributive property problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and try it with real numbers real quick. So I have a negative 14 out here. I'm going to take negative 14 times 12, which when you do that you get 168, but negative times a positive, you get a negative, okay? So then we've done this one. Now we have a negative 13h, and you take that negative 14 times a negative 13, so negative times a negative is a positive, and then 13 times 14 is 182, and then you have that h also there. So all I did was distribute that negative 14 all the way through, and this would be my answer for the distribution of that negative 14. Okay, so if I ask you to simplify, you would distribute that negative 14 all the way through. All right, going on to number 6. So this negative 13 is being times by, so this negative 13 is being times out by that 19 plus 16s. So you're just going to go ahead and times it by each individual term. So negative 13 times positive 19. So a negative times a positive is a negative. So 13 times 19 is 247. Then you're going to take a negative 13 times a positive 16s, right? That would be a negative. Negative times a positive is a negative. 16 times 13 is 208. And then we have that s. And then you still have that negative 10. The reason I'm not distributing that negative 13 to that 10 is because it is outside the parentheses. It is not being multiplied through there, okay? All right. And then we're going to go on. During 3.1, we'll learn how to combine like terms and stuff like that. That will help. This could technically be shortened, but since we're just doing distributive property, we're just going to distribute it through. Okay, so here we have 18, so that 18 is nothing's happening, but that negative 14 is being distributed all the way through. So negative 14 times a negative times a negative is a positive. 14 times 17 is 238, and then 238, my bad. 138, and then you still have that Q there, and then you take negative 14 times a positive 10, so negative times a positive is a positive. 14 times 10 is 140. 3.1 again, I'll tell you we can simplify this more, but for now we're just going to leave it here since we're just talking about the distributive property. Alright, so then here we have that negative 12, and we're distributing it all the way through. So when a number is right next to a parentheses, it means multiplication. That's why we're multiplying. So negative 12 times a positive 16, negative times a positive is a negative. 12 times 16 is 192. And then this is a negative 18c, so negative 12 times negative 18, so negative times a negative is a positive. 12 times 18 is 216. C, and then we still have that plus 15C here. All right, keep on going. That would be our answer. And then I have that 18, and I'm timesing it by that negative 15. So 15 times 18 is 270. A positive times a negative is a negative. Then I take 18 times a negative 10s. So negative times a positive is a negative. 10 times 18 is 180s, and this would be your answer. Okay. Number 8, same thing, we distribute that 19. 19 times negative 11, negative times a positive is a negative. 19 times 11 is 209. And then we still have that s. Then I have 19 times a negative 12. Negative times a positive is a negative. 12 times 19 is 228. All right, that would be my answer for that one. Okay, moving on. So nothing's happening to this negative 15f, so I'm just going to drop that on down, and then I have that negative 13, and I have to distribute that. So negative 13 times a positive 10 would be a negative. Negative times positive is a negative, and then 13 times 10 is 130. Negative 13 times a positive 14. Negative times a positive is a negative. So I get a negative there, and then 13 times 14 is 182, and then I still have that f. And so my answer would be this. We could simplify this more, but that's going to be your next section. So we're going to leave it like this just for the distributive property. All right, negative 17m, nothing's being done, so you just drop it. It's not being multiplied. Then I have that positive 16, and it is right by a parentheses, so I'm multiplying that on through. 16 times 19, a positive times a positive is a positive. And then 16 times 19 is going to get you 304, and then you keep that m there too. Okay, and then we have that 16, and we times it by that positive 18. 16 times positive 18. Positive times positive is a positive, and then you get 288. 16 times 18. Okay, moving on, number 5. So then we just have that 17 times that 13, and then that 17 times that negative 12. 17 positive times positive gives you a positive. 17 times 13 gets you 221. Then I have 17 times a negative 12. Why? Negative times positive is a negative, and then 12 times 17 is a 204y. Okay, moving on, I have that 16, and 16 times all those, so 16 times a negative 14m, negative times positive is a negative, and then 16 times 14 is 224. And then I take that 16 and I take that times the negative 13, so positive times negative is a negative. 13 times 16 is 208. Guys, do not forget to put your variables, so that 16 times that 14m would have to have that m also. So it's not just 16 times 14. All right, one last question we're going to go over before I complete this video. We're going to talk about a problem where there's just a negative sign. So 5 minus 2x plus 3. All right, so something that you need to know is that 5, nothing's being done to it, but that negative is in front of that parentheses. So there is understood a negative 1. If there is a negative in front of parentheses, there is understood that there's a negative 1 times those numbers in parentheses. So it's just like a normal problem, but if there is a negative in front of parentheses, you're going to have to go ahead and multiply that negative 1 through all problems, okay? So a negative 1 times a positive 2x is a negative, negative, positive, negative, and then 2x, and then a negative 1 times a positive 3, negative 3. So this is my answer, but guys, make sure this isn't finalized because we will learn how to do it next chapter better and simplify it a little bit more in 3.1, okay? But guys, make sure if there is a negative in front of that parentheses that you are multiplying a negative 1 through. That is probably the biggest mistake when we come to distributive properties. All right, thank you.